Hey guys, it's Jack. I wanted to let you know that we're starting a new push for subscriptions here on Human Events Daily. So make sure that when you're listening to this podcast, you hit subscribe, you download it, and you share it with 5 of your friends. Make sure they're all going and downloading as well, because we need to get the signal out as much as possible. Look, we've done so much over the past couple of years since this show started, and we're only going to do so much more. Let's get it. This is what happens when the fourth turning meets fifth generation warfare.
A commentator, international social media sensation, and former Navy intelligence veteran.
This is Human Events with your host, Jack Posobiec.
Christ is king.
The Trump administration is preparing to unveil what they're calling the economic asphyxiation of the Iranian regime through a new wave of secondary sanctions.
The actions of Treasury and other agencies will tighten the noose and block every potential source of revenue that funds the IRGC and the evil Iranian regime. And let me be clear, any entity that facilitates money laundering on behalf of Iran will be removed from the U.S. dollar system.
A new projection shows President Trump's net approval rating is negative in 47 out of 50 states. According to The Economist and YouGov, Trump's net approval is minus 26. Then let's go state by state. The data shows widespread dissatisfaction with Trump, even in states that voted for him in 2024. Ahead of the midterms, Trump has a negative net approval rating in all of the states where there are competitive Senate races this year. Places like Georgia, where Trump's net approval is negative 31. North Carolina, it's negative 25. Maine, Trump's net approval is negative 31. Texas, negative 22. And in Michigan, Trump's net approval is negative 27.
From the Supreme Court, actually, with justices saying they're going to let President Trump's executive order on mail-in balloting go into effect while a bigger court fight plays out. Remember, that order, which was signed months ago now, back in March, pushes the Postal Service to put in place a new rule that has states provide a list of eligible voters 60 days before any federal election.
You dodged again. Sex changes for minors. Do you support that?
Do you really want to have this conversation? Are you circumcised?
Yeah, but I mean, that's a
Jesse,
personal question.
Okay.
Doctor.
So you probably should want to move on. You probably should want to move on. Circumcision is surgery on a kid's ding-a-ling. So if you really want to bring that up, you can. I just think you guys are really selective about how you want to talk about these things.
Abdul, Michigan's not going for that. That is sick stuff.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily. We are here live on Real America's Voice. Today's August 25th, 2026, Anno Domini. Folks, I get that there's some people saying, hey, you know, what's going on with this Lindsay Clancy trial? Why are we still talking about this? She's obviously a heinous murderer, and I'm sympathetic to that. I completely agree with you. But then I keep seeing the behavior of the crazy feminists who are in the courtroom now, smiling, laughing, and giggling. Not just one, there's 3 of them in there for the cameras, while all of this is going on. So this one in particular, she's a writer for Teen Vogue, a reporter, mind you. She's someone, the woman in green, her name is Brittany Romano. And she's posted all this publicly. So she's a member of the press. She's written for Business Insider. She's written for USA Today. And she's completely insane. And she posted multiple videos last night, deleted them. But fortunately, the crack team here at Human Events Daily saved every single one. And oh, yes, we promised that we would name and shame when it came to the toxic feminists in the Lindsay Clancy trial. And here we are delivering on exactly that. This video in particular, by the way, is not from the Lindsay Clancy trial. This was her after the Luigi Maggioni trial, where she says that not only has she been in communication, or no, excuse me, not only has she been going to the trial and attending these hearings, but she's been in communication with Maggioni. Not they're writing love letters back and forth with Luigi Maggioni. Yes. And this situation is getting worse. I believe we have guys, do we have that deleted video? Do we have that clip, the deleted video that we saved? This is the one where she's in the white shirt. Because she posted this up responding, and she is just having a meltdown, a complete meltdown on air. So guys, let's play that now.
Yeah, so hello, my name's Brittany Romano, and everyone really seems to have an issue with me. And here's the thing that we need to all straighten out. Last week I walked back in with spinach in my teeth. So when I was late after having to deal with the Luigi Mangione crisis, I love how everyone's really giving preconceived notions, but yet you're sitting in your living rooms giving X, Y, and Z. If you were in that courtroom every single day, I would love to know what your thoughts are. But this little El Parentant, my name is Brittany Romano. Please don't spell it wrong. I have an older brother, Justin, Justyn, and a little brother named Nick. And here's the thing, I do date a lawyer, and every single thing that you've been saying has been screenshotted. So maybe look in on the repercussions of what you're saying.
Yeah, I think you're right. Everything has been screenshotted and saved, and we've screenshotted all of your stuff. And yes, we've caught you in 4K. And this situation, it's regrettable, but it has to be called out and it has to be shamed. I'm also being told that, I don't have full confirmation on this, that there is some breaking news that Dolly Parton has in fact passed away. And if that's true, of course, a huge American icon, a massive loss for the country. She was beloved by millions, incredible songs, incredible figure, just part of Americana. And so God bless to Dolly Parton, and of course her family is in our prayers. We'll be right back here, Real America's Voice, Human Events Daily.
Where's Jack? Where's Jack? Where is he? Jack, I want to see you. Great job, Jack. Thank you. What a job you do. You know, we have an incredible thing. We're always talking about the fake news and the bad, but we have guys, and these are the guys who should be getting Pulitzers.
All right, folks. Jack Posobiec back live here at Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. And folks, what happens if someone in your family gets sick at 2 a.m.? Let me ask you a question. Would you rather wait for care? Would you rather have to find out if the urgent care is open? You want to go mess with an ER these days? Because let me tell you something. The ERs in the United States are getting absolutely horrific because they're packed with illegals and they're packed with migrants. They use it as their primary care. Or another option could be you already have the medications on hand. That's why you need the Wellness Company. The Wellness Company created the Medical Emergency Kit, a doctor-prescribed kit containing 8 life-saving prescription medications, including antibiotics, ivermectin, and more, designed to help treat more than 30 common conditions like UTIs, pneumonia, and strep throat. But does having treatment on hand really make a difference? To answer that question, the Wellness Company conducted the first study of its kind among more than 500 medical verified emergency kit owners. 86% avoided a clinic, urgent care, or hospital, and more than 80% reported meaningful improvement within just 3 days. Simply complete a quick online questionnaire. If approved by a licensed physician, your kit ships directly to your door. twc.health/POSO and use promo code POSO for $30 off and free shipping. Kits are available to the U.S. residents only. Remember, that's twc.health/POSO. Again, twc.health/POSO. Okay, we're working on getting our next guest up, but and if you don't believe me, guys, if you don't believe me, there's a clip out of GB News that we just saw that I'd love to be able to play for you guys, because this was someone on the news who was asked about the Lindsay Clancy case, obviously a feminist, and let's see how she reacted. It's Bravo 321.
They should be commended because they did.
I've had it with you.
Oh my God! They should be commended. They didn't
and
kill their children. She's a murderer. These women are cheering. These are man-hating women that are standing outside. This is what it's about. They think the husband did it. They're crazy. They've lost their mind.
Do you know why
they're waving for a murderer?
Do you know why the woman is in a wheelchair? Did you even notice that she's in a wheelchair?
Couldn't care less. She's a murderer.
Because she jumped out the window after this
So
happened.
she should have. I'd have pushed her. They say that Lindsay was in psychosis. I think these women are suffering from psychosis. They've been watching too many true crime Netflix dramas. You know, this was an incredibly privileged woman, incredibly wealthy. She had a nanny, and she's still complaining that she needed help. She could not have got more help from the system that she already have received. This is a murderer who strangled her children one by one. One of the boys ran away, and she chased him down and killed him.
Laurie Watkins.
What you just said was absolutely disgusting.
Thank
and
you.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Thank you.
And you can hear that he's not. Okay?
Why? Because it's true.
You clearly don't care, so pipe down.
I don't care. And by the way, men watching this, if you have a woman sat next to you on the sofa who is defending this murderer, you got to think deeply about this. I've seen weddings of
we
people
need to have some empathy with.
Talk to your women and find out what are they thinking. They're defending this woman. It's
I don't think anybody's defending what she did, but you can have empathy for what she went through and how she.
I know many women that this has happened to. No, they did not kill their children, but they also, what you failed to mention.
They should be commended because they did.
I've had it with you.
Oh my God! They should be commended. They didn't
and
kill their children. She's a murderer. These women are cheering.
Oh my goodness. Oh my absolute goodness. Bravo, by the way, to the guy there. Bravo to Thomas Corbett Dillon for standing his ground, for standing up for facts, for pointing out that, yes, Lindsay Clancy had a nanny. She had all the support in the world. She had nothing but support. And I got to say that these toxic feminists, this is the biggest danger. The biggest danger of all is that you could be talking to people like this who have this fried mental model of reality, who have this false belief in that men and children are an oppressor class, that they are the oppressed. You could be talking to them every day in your regular life, and you don't even know it until you scratch the surface. That's why we put out Socialist Revolution, the update to Unhumans, tactics for patriots to crush a communist uprising, because this is exactly what we're facing. And it's available for pre-order now. You need to get this, and specifically that chapter on toxic feminists, get that in the chapter. Potentially, you got a bro out there, just saying, if you got a bro out there who's in a situation like this, slide him a copy of Socialist Revolution and say, skip to this chapter. You'll thank me when you're done. We'll bring on Katie Zachariah now. She is the spokeswoman for Truth Social. She's also former spokeswoman for the Department of Homeland Security. Katie, how are you?
I'm excellent. I'm also a mother of 4, Jack, and so this case.
Well, I was just going to say, you're getting ahead of me in the script here, because I was just going to say that, but here we are. Yes, the formerly pregnant female. That's what we have to say these days. Formerly pregnant female, Katie Zachariah joins us 4 times, right? Formerly pregnant, yes. 4 times, and yes. Because we can't use the word mother anymore. Katie, what is it? Why is a case like this taken on political tones?
Oh, Jack, watching this case from the very beginning, I thought everyone was on the same page, right? I thought we all knew she's guilty of murdering her children. Now we're just, as a lawyer, now we're just discussing capacity, right? That the defense has brought up a lot of issues with capacity. What does that mean? That really only determines what degree of murder she can be charged for, not whether or not she committed these crimes, Jack. And the most troubling part is the realization, Jack, that we are not dealing in reality any longer, that people, as the host of the show pointed out, as all these women across your screen are showing, that people are defending her for murdering her children, not on capacity, not on legal grounds, on just pure, in your words, toxic feminism. And to watch the downgrade, the downfall of society, where women, we started, and I'm going to be very clear, Jack, this started with the advocacy of abortion. This has started in 1973 and has been downstream ever since. That when women are championing the death and murder and the ability to murder their children from conception all the way through. When does humanity begin and end? And this is the slippery slope that everyone started. Oh, you can't keep saying that. It's conception. It's why the Supreme Court, in many ways, overturned, other than the fact that it was unconstitutional, that the federal government never gave grounds for abortion and carved it out. It's why Dobbs happened, because Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey were not good law, not valid law. But it's the slippery slope of viability that they tried to go down. It's like, if you don't value life from the beginning, Jack, then you get to the point of birth and beyond. And the women now are defending the murder of innocent children and showing sympathy and compassion. You can have compassion to a psychosis, to a mental state, but that doesn't exonerate guilt.
You know, this has always been, as a member of the pro-life movement, that this has always been this sort of sneaking suspicion that as I've learned more and faced off against toxic feminists on campus or at the March for Life or DC or wherever, Women's March, wherever I find them with their pink hats, that, you know, it always seemed to me that, you know, that they seem to know exactly what abortion is. And they seem to actually still be making excuses for it. And it's always been kind of a, you know, like a meme that, you know, you would support a woman or make excuses for a woman who actually killed her own children even after birth. We're kind of seeing that, aren't we? We're kind of seeing that there's this disconnect between culpability, and I saw you tweeting about this as well. There's a disconnect between culpability and motivation. And so they're arguing, well, you know, the motivations are sacrosanct, but they don't actually take away the culpability, do they?
Correct. People are conflating capacity, right? And they want to talk about the 13 psychiatric meds, of which I've talked about at length, Jack. And I think everyone can agree that the 13 psychiatric meds with contraindications and many and multiple doctors prescribing her different medications and psychiatric medications played a role in her mental state. There is no doubt about that. But that does not go towards whether or not she murdered her kids and then to excuse the behavior. This goes to whether or not she could form the coherent thought and what the sliding line in first-degree murder, second-degree murder, or involuntary manslaughter is what was her mental state at the time. That is the only discussion on capacity and the psychiatric medications, not whether or not she killed her children. And people are conflating the two, Jack, and they're trying to use legal language that gets intermixed with guilt and not guilty. She is guilty for murdering her children. Her husband had no part of this. and the desire for these toxic feminists to mush all of the facts together and create a narrative that is outside of the bounds of any reality that anybody has been paying attention to only shows it's not just the propaganda and the kind of sinister ideology behind this, Jack. This is the trans ideology for kids, transing kids. This is abortion. This is an attack on culture that if you are not defending your most innocent, whether it's your unborn, your newborns, or your elderly, that your culture is lost. And quite frankly, to go off of a lot of what we have talked about in the past is this is the communist infiltration. If you don't value the family, if you don't value your young, your unborn, and your infirm, you are really sliding down kind of towards that communist revolution.
You have to put life first, and the direct attack on the nuclear family that Marxism has always been attacking since Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto itself. So of course communists would support destroying the nuclear family. They've been trying to do it for hundreds of years. But if you don't actually study what the communists believe, you'll never understand until it's too late. Right back, Jack Posobiec, Human Events Daily.
You talk about influencers. These are influencers, and they're friends of mine. Jack Posobiec. Where's Jack? Jack, who's done a great job.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec, we are back live, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice. Folks, a lot of companies talk about American values. But for most of them, it's just talk. It's a slogan, a marketing pitch. When it matters, they're nowhere to be found. That's why Patriot Mobile is different. For more than 12 years, my friends over at Patriot Mobile have stood with Americans who believe freedom is worth fighting for. They were built on a simple idea. If corporations are using commerce to shape the culture, Americans deserve a real conservative alternative. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. You get premium priority nationwide service on any of the 3 major U.S. networks, unlimited data plans, international roaming, and 100% U.S.-based customer service. And Patriot Mobile gives you something most carriers can't: 2 separate networks on one phone. That means stronger coverage, more flexibility, and peace of mind when you need it most. But what really separates Patriot Mobile is their mission. So every year, Patriot Mobile contributes millions to organizations defending free speech, religious liberty, the sanctity of life, the Second Amendment, America's future as well. They're not sitting on the sidelines. They're in the fight, standing up for the values that matter to you, your family, and this country. So if you're going to pay for wireless service anyway, why not support a company that actually shares your American values? Go to patriotmobile.com/POSO or call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code POSO for a free month of service. That's patriotmobile.com/POSO, promo code POSO, or call 972-PATRIOT. Make the switch today. All right, folks. And you know, you look at all this, and I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it. The fact that this happened in Plymouth, Massachusetts, it really got you thinking about the Salem witch trials, and maybe, just maybe, the Salem Town Council wasn't completely wrong the way everyone thought. I want to play a clip now. This is Charlie 21 from this morning.
You. Yes. Let me tell you something. Yes. I don't want to talk to you again. Why? Because you are a biased weasel. Not at all. Okay? That's ridiculous, Kevin. Ridiculous? Why? Yes. Go read what you say about my case. Go read about that guy with the bald head yesterday. That doctor you said yesterday, that the jury was eating it up. They were. They were. You said outside he was a nice guy. Stay away from me. Kevin, you said outside that he was a good guy. Wrong guy. Why? I was talking about somebody else. He was a good witness. Stay away from me. Kirk was a good witness, Kevin. You said it yourself.
And so what you're looking at there, that was a video of Lindsay Clancy's lawyer, who was really just having a meltdown against a reporter who asked a pretty simple question about a witness in the trial. This psychiatrist who's come up and had some pretty simple questions for him. This guy, this lawyer, has been like a celebrity to these toxic feminists. They love him. They call him Big Red. His name's Reddington. It's become an absolute circus. And I want to get Katie Zachariah back in here. Katie, when we're talking about getting justice in this country, whether it's justice for Lindsay Clancy's children, whether it's justice for Charlie Kirk, at some point, have we lost sight of the victims in these processes?
Yes, we've lost sight of the victims. And this lawyer who refuses to even answer a simple question is indicative of the fact that we're not holding people accountable, that the slow rollout of justice is so clear. And while we have a very wonderful Constitution that gives people the protection of having legal representation, and everyone gets their quote day in court and is up against a trial, or their offender has to face a trial by jury. Listen, Jack, so much of our legal system right now is caught up in victimizing the perpetrator. This is Luigi Mangione. This is what we've seen with kind of this radical feminism coming behind Lindsay Clancy, a woman who murdered her children, that we are victimizing the perpetrator instead of holding the perpetrator accountable.
And this is part and parcel of Marxism, though, isn't it? We in Unhumans, we lay out this strategy called DARVO. And DARVO, it's very simple: deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. And you will always see the communists do this. So you deny what is happening, you attack the person who makes the accusation, and then you reverse victim and offender. You reverse them every single time. So you reverse the victim. The mother is actually the victim. And the offender, it can't be the children, so it's got to be the father, right? So it's got to be the father. This is a tactic. And when I see it happening over and over, and I see people, rushing to be on one side or the other without realizing that they're using a tactic in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely, Jack. And as we were discussing earlier, I think even if you go back to 1973 and Roe v. Wade, and how they reframed pregnancy as a woman is the victim of being pregnant, and she has the autonomy to do with her body what she wants, which is destroy and murder an unborn innocent life, though she is not a victim in most circumstances, Jack.
No, the victim is always the victims. The victim is always the one who's been murdered. But there's something, I think maybe it's algorithmic with TikTok, or maybe just something in our society where we've played this game. You see it in movies too a lot, where we have to understand the bad guy. Disney does it in the new Disney series. We have to understand the motivations of Cruella de Vil. We have to understand the motivations of Maleficent. We have to understand the motivations of all these characters. By the way, I'll even go so far, hot take, that Elsa is actually the villain of Frozen. People don't like that, but I've been saying it for quite some time, that when you look at what she does to the city and to its inhabitants and the kingdom, it's clearly she's a villain. That's what villains do. But for some reason, it's all flipped around.
Yes, and Jack, one of the things I talk to my children a lot about is how you use language, right? And I want to, and it all pours down to how you treat the perpetrator and victim, exactly what you're saying here. So, for instance, I want to draw attention to this because it has to be discussed with El Sayed. Okay, his name is El Sayed. It's not Sayed. And what I discuss with my children is people don't want you to say El Sayed because he does not sound American. So they Americanize his name to Sayed because that is a familiar sound. It's the same with Eileen Wang, which is actually, as you know, Wong, the mayor out here in Arcadia, who is a CCP
so
infiltrator.
True. This is the linguistic games and linguistic tactics that they use every single time. Katie, we're once again stopped by the clock. Most unfortunate. But tell people where they can go for more of your linguistic hot takes when it comes to the processes and the tactics of the Marxists.
Follow me on True Social at Katie Zachariah, also Instagram, LinkedIn, and X. You can find me everywhere, Katie Zachariah.
Thank you so much, Katie. God bless you. Right back with more with attorney Andrew Branca.
One communist on the faculty of one university is one communist too many. One communist among the American advisors at Yalta was one communist too many.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec, we're back live, Human Events Daily. And while this Lindsay Clancy case, the circus has taken over the country, it's certainly blown up the entire internet. You've got feminist hosts or guests screaming at hosts and storming off of sets. You've got women who are supportive of her and also supportive of Luigi, these groupies that are now and by the way, not just infiltrating, using press credentials because they're reporters at Teen Vogue, going in and giggling in the courtroom. I want to bring in attorney Andrew Branca here because he's someone who's studied this from the legal perspective as well as the cultural perspective. He does the Andrew Branca Show, and we're always so honored to be graced with his presence. Andrew, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me back on.
Well, so let me ask you this just from the very start, because, when I look at this case, from my perspective, I don't see a lot of a very, strong legal question here in the case. As she's admitted guilt, she's admitted to the actions. There's been so many stipulations from her own side and her own legal team. Really it comes down to this question, which typically goes to the jury, and it certainly is. Obviously, all questions go to the jury, but questions of fact. But this one is the biggest of all: is whether or not she's culpable or of her actions because she was of a sound mind or not. And the jury, of course, is coming up to that. Am I missing something here, or is that really all that's at play?
Well, I mean, legally speaking, she's criminally accountable for having killed her children, unless she can convince the jury that she was essentially psychotic, had a breakage with reality, did not know what she was doing at all. And typically, psychosis in an insanity case would be something like you've killed another human being, but you thought they were a space lizard from another planet. You did not know you were murdering a human being. That would relieve you of the criminal culpability. The trouble for her here, first, the biggest thing in her favor is she's in Massachusetts. So in most states, if you claim an insanity defense, you have to prove that you were insane, generally by clear and convincing evidence, which is a pretty high standard. Think of it as 70%, 75% of the evidence. But if you're in Massachusetts, which takes the minority position, and you claim the insanity defense, the state has to disprove that you were insane beyond any reasonable doubt, which is the highest threshold of evidence we have in the law. So on the same exact facts, if she were making these arguments in almost the large majority of other states, she'd be cooked. She'd have no chance at all. She may have a chance just in Massachusetts because they place such a heavy burden on the state. Now, having said that, especially to anyone who heard the expert testimony of the state's witness, Dr. Kirk Heilbrunn was his name. What a compelling witness that was, debunking her psychosis claims based on the interviews he did with her, the scientific methods he applied to her responses to questions. This simply does not look into anyone who's an unbiased, impartial person as a psychotic event.
Well, and I thought it was very interesting that he was talking about, and there was a graphic that I posted up as well that somebody made where that in a normal hallucination, this is what he was breaking down. The normal hallucination, it's brief and fragmented bursts. It happens over the course of months. So as you're saying, it's a frequent, it's a recurring thing. It's not something that only lasts for 18 minutes. It's not something that you would have on your first time and that you would have episodes afterwards. And plus there would be no this sort of goal-directed planning with a hallucination. It would literally be just a psychotic act in the moment. So nothing where you would plan, say, make sure the husband's out of the house and make sure that he's going to the store that's far away and make sure that you can answer the phone call and, really not something that's been stipulated in this case or that's been testified to. And there were some serious questions that I think that he was raising as to whether or not this was something that really had kind of been concocted by the defense team.
Well, it certainly has that feel to it, right? And of course, the defense, that's their job, to come up with the best narrative of not guilty for their client that they possibly can. But this defense lawyer, like all defense lawyers, we're stuck with the facts that our clients give us. And unfortunately, she's not providing any good facts. As you say, a psychosis is generally long-standing. Anyone who's seen the movie A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe, covering the story of John Forbes Nash, that describes more accurately than anything we're seeing in this trial what someone developing and living with a psychosis is like. It happens over a long period of time. It doesn't conveniently happen for 18 minutes while you're murdering your children. Never happened before. It never happens again afterwards. Trying to blame this on postpartum, technically, can postpartum extend out to 18 months since the birth of the last child? Yes. But that's several standard deviations away from the 4 weeks or 6 weeks where postpartum issues are most typically intense. And I talked about this reasonable doubt standard that the state has to meet. They have to disprove insanity beyond a reasonable doubt. But that doesn't mean just how many arguments the defense made or just a weighing of the sheer volume of the evidence. The jury has to apply their sense of reason, their powers of reason to the testimony before them, decide what they believe is credible and not credible. And this expert witness presented by the state was overwhelmingly superior to any of the experts presented by the defense in terms of his credibility and the rational reason he's applying for why her responses when under examination by him were inconsistent with psychosis.
Oh, and that's, of course, we played a clip just before he came on of her lawyer snapping at a reporter who asked about that witness. This is the witness that we're referring to that has her lawyer snapping because I think he realizes that did a lot of damage to his case. Now, that being said, so much of this is taking place outside of the courtroom, and some of the outside is bleeding into the inside. When you look in terms of the gallery, these reporters who are laughing and smirking, and this one who's deleting posts and reposting things and having meltdowns on Instagram. How much of this gets into the courtroom, this outside sentiment? Obviously, we're seeing the Luigi Maggioni case, a similar circus, the Charlie Kirk murder case, that, in these instances, how much of this sentiment should we account for when we look at the jury? And I understand the jury, I just pulled up the stats on this. It is 12 women and 6 men. So obviously there will be, a number of alternates there. Right. I don't know if they haven't chosen who are the alternates. Well, I guess they don't know who's the alternate until the actual the jury gets it. But that being said, we have it on their honor that they're not looking at TikTok and hopefully not talking to their friends about this. But should we really expect that none of this is going to seep in?
No, I would not expect that at all. I mean, even before the internet era, juries are they're human beings, right? So they're inherently dangerous and unpredictable creatures. Anytime the cases I work on are usually use of force cases, self-defense cases, I could have the most innocent client in the world. And I have to tell them, listen, if we put you in front of a jury, even though I believe you're 100% innocent, there's at least a 25% chance you get convicted. That's just noise in the system. That's how unpredictable juries are. And of course, now that the internet exists, how would they get away from this? Right? We're all walking around with the internet in our pocket. Our phones ping. We look at them. It's practically unavoidable. It will be interesting to see what percentage of the jury ultimately ends up being women on this case, because I believe, just based on observations, that there's a lot of women who are taking a very different view of this case than a lot of men are.
Well, and that's certainly what we've seen online. And, we saw this bubbling up. We did a thought crime episode, I think, the first week of the trial before it really had blown up online, saying that there's something is bubbling up here that is not good. And then we saw that very weekend, $1 million be raised. Now, nominally, they say it's for her parents. But if you look at the comments, they're saying this is for Lindsay. We want Lindsay to get better. We see these women, these toxic feminists creating all sorts of alternate scenarios that have no bearing in reality whatsoever, which leads me to believe that it's almost like they're the ones who think they have some kind of existence in a hyper reality. It is disordered thinking. They are not living in reality.
They're living in their version of reality in which they simply do not want this woman held accountable for killing her children. The one common thread through all of their various protests is simply there must not be accountability. There has to be an excuse that relieves Lindsay Clancy of any kind of accountability for having murdered her children. You could argue it's the failed pharmaceutical industry, or her husband didn't provide enough help, or everyone's responsible except for Clancy herself. It's astonishing. And I think about this, and of course, this is not all women. You and I are both married to women who are mothers to our children and love their children, and they think Clancy's probably criminally guilty and ought to go to prison for the rest of her life. But and when you look at a woman like this who's killed her 3 children, you might think, well, how could anybody have any sympathy for her? But apparently,
and that's where the feminism comes in. Quick break. Right back with Andrew Branca here, Human Events Daily, Real America's Voice.
We're going to call this the Jack Posobiec Appreciation Hour. I can say confidently, I think Josh Shapiro would be the vice presidential nominee if it wasn't for Jack Posobiec. And that is, I'm being honest.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec back live, Real America's Voice, Human Events Daily. We're on with Andrew Branca. He's an attorney. He's been in court. He's testified. He's been through all of this. And folks, he's looking at this Lindsay Clancy case, and he's looking at all of it and trying to understand. And we're trying to go through this and understand how a case like this, of something so heinous, something that quite frankly I don't like thinking about at all, has gotten to a point where it's so bad. And so Andrew, when we talk about this in our new book on Human Socialist Revolution, the new edition, the new update, that we talk about how this movement started with the original, feminist movement, and it goes all the way back to abortion, and that this idea that, we've always sort of had this feeling, for those of us like myself on the pro-life side, that, they say, oh, it's just a clump of cells, it's just a fetus. No, I think it's obviously not. And furthermore, I think you know what you're doing. I think you don't actually believe that. I don't think you actually believe that it's just a medical procedure. I think you know deep down that you're killing babies. And I think the mask is off. What do you say?
In some ways, I almost imagine it's worse when, say, a woman is young and has an abortion and that she's been convinced that this is just a clump of cells. And then she grows up, right, and gets married and has children that she bears. And she's got 1 kid, 2 kids, maybe, God bless her, 3 children. And wouldn't you always have to think, now they're human, wouldn't you always have to think to yourself, I could have had another, right? I could have had the eldest and I killed him. And I don't know how you live with that without having some kind of, it's unimaginable to me. And I see these women in the crowds being interviewed and they're saying things like, well, Lindsay, Clancy, that could have been my sister. That could have been my aunt, a momentary psychosis and they killed their kids. It could have been me. And I'm thinking to myself, it could have been you who killed your 3 children. It could have been you. And then I wonder to myself, for how many of these women is it actually not, it could have been me, but it was me? I've killed 3 of my children, because if you look at the statistics, about 25% of women have had an abortion. About 5% have had 3 or more. 5% of the female population in America is 8 million women. There are 8 million women you could make the case they are Lindsay Clancy. They've done this too. And if they can't say she should be held accountable, if they shouldn't be held accountable.
I mean, everything you're saying tracks. That's perfectly logical. That's a perfectly logical answer for what's actually going on, because the things they're saying don't make any sense at all. They bear no relation to reason. They bear no relation to any facts of the case or the evidence or the timeline or the cell phone. They have tracking on her cell phone when she was going up and down the stairs, by the way. They can actually, because your cell phone tracks that when you're increasing in elevation and declining. So they know exactly when she went up the stairs. She went down the stairs and then she went up the stairs twice. So we can see all of this. We can see all of this from the data. She took her Apple Watch off, by the way, at one point during this hour that she was gone. And so, I've gone way down on the facts of this case, as you could see. And it's remarkable, by the way, that, people don't realize just how much you are being surveilled by your devices on a regular basis. And if they even wanted to, you can use Wi-Fi and the fields within Wi-Fi, the radio frequencies, to determine where people are in the house. And even some smart TVs do that, because they are then tracking when you've come into the room and what hours you're watching TV and not, and your TV might flash on, Samsung does that. And so, all of these, by the way, can come up in a murder trial. But of course, if you're not reading any of that, it's because there's something that's far darker, that you're not actually concerned with whether or not she committed it. You know that she did, but you're still looking for ways for her to avoid accountability. And this really does come down to, I think, the darker question, because if you can't hold someone accountable for this, then they could get away with anything.
Yeah, and just imagine if we had the male equivalent of this, that a husband, a father, decided to commit a horrific murder-suicide, kill 3 of his children, and then failed to but attempt to kill himself. There's no way there would be hundreds of men standing outside the courtroom shouting their support for that dude. Men just aren't wired that way.
Well,
so
you might
it's
have.
amazing to see so many women doing this.
And by the way, if you had, Chris Watts is an example, this Family Annihilator, and he wanted to start a new family, kills his pregnant wife, kills his 2 daughters, stuffed them into, I think, oil barrels or tanks or something like this, 2018, just discussing. Yeah, you would have men responding to that, and men would be outside the courthouse saying, let us have him. Just right. Hand him to us, and we'll take care of this. Because men would be signing up to swing the axe. That's the difference. Is that, and it wouldn't be something you'd be screaming about. It's just, this guy's an animal, and someone who does something like that has forfeited his right to life. And so we now have to respond accordingly. It's really simple. It's really simple.
Used to be
that's what you saw in the Old West.
Yeah, well, in all of Western civilization, actually. So one of the reasons
obviously
Western civilization is different than the rest of the globe is because we used to traditionally take 1% of our population and execute them. I mean, these were the sociopaths and the psychopaths and the people who committed the most horrific murders. When we caught them, we just hung them. Well, that's evolution in progress, right? We're removing their genes from the gene pool, and you do that for hundreds of years, and you've changed your civilization into one where those behaviors are minimized. And you do away with the check on that, and you see inevitably a resurgence of it.
Well, that's exactly correct. And even funny enough is that actually goes, the Marxists today actually go further than Karl Marx himself. Because even Karl Marx, if you read the Communist Manifesto, which I've done because you have to understand your enemy, he writes about how he says, of course, we know the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, but everybody misses the third social group that Karl Marx ascribes to society. And the third group, and we talk about this in Unhumans, is the Lumpenproll. And the Lumpenproll, according to Marx, is, of course, this criminal element. And he says there's one level of society that's just antisocial. They don't fit in with society at all. They're never going to make it through society, and you have to get rid of them from society one way or the other. And they just right. Can't. They're not going to be participants in the revolution. They're not going to be participants in So they believe socialism is the mechanism, and communism is the utopia. So they'll never be part of any of that. And you just have to get rid of them somehow. So even Karl Marx admitted this. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, he would see them as like broken gears in the machine, defective gears in the machine.
Precisely.
You got to remove them. You got to replace them with ones that work.
But this, of course, is what we find with Lenin, because Lenin, and this is where Leninism comes in, said, well, what if we use those broken wheels and sick them on society? And what if and this is why you have the release of hardened criminals and violent criminals in society. Irina Zarutska, of course, was a victim of this, where they'll say, if we can inflict them on society, then they will terrorize the middle class into compliance. And this is, of course, what the Bolsheviks did, and it's what we see the DSA doing in the United States in every single place that they get power.
Yeah, it's really a form of biological warfare. I mean, this is not an accident that we keep seeing these cases where all these horrific violent actors, they're known, and they're known to the system. This is not their first violent crime. It may not be their 20th violent crime. If we legitimately took people off the streets, gave them a life sentence after 1, 2, 3 felony offenses, 90% of violent crime would go away. It's being committed by a tiny fraction of the population. But there are people for whom they gain political power when those monsters are unleashed on the rest of us.
No, that's exactly correct. And I say this as I don't think people realize how bad Philadelphia has gotten, actually. San Francisco is actually doing better and Baltimore is even doing better than they were at their dip. For some reason, variety of reasons, Philadelphia, which has a George Soros prosecutor, has gotten as bad or worse than they have done. And I'm planning to do some more reporting on this and make it more publicly known that it's horrific. But what people need to understand is that it is deliberate. It is not an accident. The violence is the point. The terrorism is the point. The support for Lindsay Clancy killing her children is the point. Andrew Branca, where can people go to follow you, man?
Take care, man.
Oh, tell people where they can get your show.
Oh, The Branca Show. The Branca Show, BRANCA, on YouTube and X and everywhere else.
All right, The Branca Show. Go and check it out. Might have to go on there sometime soon. I like that show. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay ashore.